Hi, we're going to talk now about the HR technology conference that's going on right now. And I have to say, kudos to the team there, Steve Bose and the whole group. They were going to do this in person, and obviously they cannot. So they pushed the event back, and were able to make it happen in short order. So the experience from a visitor perspective, I think, is top notch. Obviously, I do these events as well. So I really like what they've put together. So, again, great on them, and kudos for their team and the community at large. I think it's a massive value. And I'm going to talk a little bit about some of the sessions and what I would call convergent validity. And so, what the heck is convergent validity? When you hear similar themes emerge from different people over time, it starts to add credence or validity to what's emerging. And so let me highlight some examples, and I'm going to conclude with some key takeaways. And I'm going to go in reverse order, if I recall correctly, to when they presented. So I'm going to talk about some themes from Stacey Harris's presentation, from Stacia Sherman-Gar's presentation, and also Josh Berson's presentation. And so let's start with Stacey's. So Stacey, as a longtime researcher that do the HR tech research study, and I've been, Lexi Martin started it, nearly 20 years ago. Forgive me for not knowing the exact date, but Stacey has been doing it for the last several years and been doing an outstanding job and enhancing it. And and just to be clear, this is not a substitute for going to see those actual sessions. So you can still register and see these videos and see the presentations when they've been made available for a number of weeks. I don't know the exact day. I think it's the next 30 days, if I'm not mistaken. So anyway, she talked about how workforce planning is the next HR frontier for us who are doing not only people analytics, but in HR in general. And for me to see this, given where I'm at in my career and life, I'm just like, oh my gosh, because this is a theme that has been kind of Groundhog Day. It's kind of always this, much like people analytics itself. It's like workforce planning just around the corner, just around the corner. However, I believe this to be true. Workforce planning is getting better defined, and particularly as we're dealing with COVID and understanding where workers are, what their needs are, empowering them with resources in remote work environments, looking out for their well-being. Workforce planning is essential. It has a external impetus, if you will, to actually come to life. And I'm going to come back to that because that's going to speak to how we're actually going to formulate not only workforce plans, but people or talent strategies overall. And it's going to take a village to do that because it's not just HR anymore. It is facilities, it is operations, of course, it's IT, and you might have someone doing employee experience, digital transformation, all these things. There needs to be some cohesive, there needs to be some glue that brings all of those different themes together. And I'll just highlight this is that if you heard me present over the years, I often say, cite a Chinese proverb, the beginning of wisdom is calling things by their right names. So whatever language you use in your organization, make sure it's well socialized and well understood. It, as many cases, HR professionals talking past their business partners and IT partners. And so really land on the language that resonates with you and your organization. But the essence of workforce planning is here to stay, and I'll explain why as we go. So going back to the social responsibility theme, it came out in her presentation when it was focused on HR tech, culture is influencing strategy, social responsibilities, and business outcomes do, in fact, align. And this is a key theme like we talked about in the initial segment. And when we talk about stakeholder relationship management, social responsibility is been viewed as oh gosh, it's something that we're going to do to enhance the employment brand. It's something that, we have to do because there's some compliance around it. But truly, it is good business. And it is going to create not only a elevated experience and employment brand internally, it's going to elevate the brand externally, particularly if those values are adopted by the workforce at large and it becomes a cultural norm, as opposed to just somebody somewhere in a room making sure that a bunch of boxes are checked. So let's keep that in mind as we go. And we'll now toggle over to Stacia's research that she presented the other day, I believe yesterday. And so where she has been in the HR technology space, the learning space, and has been looking at what's been happening from a variety of different angles, performance space, people analytics. And she just did this research about purpose. And when I say she, I can hear her voice in my ear say, Al, it's not just me, it's Priyanka, it's the whole team. So kudos to the whole team there, Danny Johnson, her co-founder as well. So the essence of why am I here? What is my purpose as an individual? And what is our purpose as an organization? And are we staying in integrity with that purpose? That is a question that I believe not only we're asking as we're looking up at the stars, it's a question that we're asking and answering each and every day. And do our business processes, our technology selections, our analytics, our talent strategies, do they all align with that purpose? So with that, what she did, like I said, they did a piece of research on this very topic, a journey to understand purpose. And it's just live now. So go to redthreadresearch.com or go and watch her session because I thought it was exceptional. All three of the presentations that I'm referencing were frankly exceptional. So it's well worth your time to register and go in there. The thing that I get so excited about this is HR has a unique opportunity to be the facilitator of this over time. And so what the heck does that mean? It's like we can talk about purpose all day, but how do we bring it to life? And it's going to be through our processes. It's going to be through the insights we generate. It's going to be the technologies that we select. And here are some of the dimensions that she was referring to. Now, these are virtually identical to the dimensions I mentioned in the first segment when we talked about stakeholder relationship management. Keep in mind, this research that she led is in 2020. Firms of endearment, and the research was 27 and before, or 2007 and before, sorry. So what are we going to do over the next 15 years, and more relevant to where we are now, what are we going to do over the next 3 to 6 months going into next year? After all, we're in this, and again, I don't like it as much as the next person, but we are in a new normal. We do have these external factors that are influencing that. We're not going to go back to an office and have hundreds of people in a one structure, not like we used to anyway. So given that reality, what is going to be a way that we actually look out for people and we actually enable them to identify and nurture their purpose? And one of the things that she highlighted in her research, again, it's actually good business. It's not just a nice thing to do. It's not just something that you want to do to check a box and say you're a good organization. It's really substantive in that it will drive innovation, it will drive productivity, it will drive focus, it will drive many cultural attributes that are going to sustain the organization over time. So I strongly recommend you take a look at that piece of research. And I'll also highlight that we're in the midst of collecting data for the people analytics research that they're leading. So when you go to redthreadresearch.com, look over and participate in that as well, because there is, unsurprisingly, going to be alignment between the insights generated, how they're generated, the trust and integrity and transparency that's built through transparency and having an ethics charter or a position on how you're going to use data and analytics. So fantastic work that they're doing. So from here, I'm going to toggle over to Josh Burson, and undoubtedly, if you're in the HR space, you've heard him talk as COVID came down the pipe, the big reset in HR and this new operating model. And we talk about moving from efficiency to adaptiveness or adaptability. And that screams for me, Michael Arena, Adaptive Space, which is a book right behind me as well. Michael did unsurprisingly an outstanding job at PAFOW earlier in the month. So if you haven't seen his presentation, go to pafow.net and log into the PAFOW campus and watch his presentation. I mean, it was truly outstanding because we are in this case where we got to be, yes, agile. Totally, it's kind of an overused word. What the heck does that mean? But really adapting at speed is what it's about, not only from an organizational perspective, but from an individual, team, and group perspective. So how do we remain resilient, not only for the organization to be sustained, but for ourselves? And for me, that means setting boundaries. And how do we set boundaries? Well, we need visibility into the work that's being done and not done. So with that, there's management philosophy has changed, and you see on the far right, I'm not going to go through the whole thing, really focus on empathy, trust, resilience, and growth. What is the employee value proposition? How am I going to get better at what I do, or something that's adjacent to what I currently do, so I elevate my employability over time? Is that not only my personal responsibility, or does the organization also have some role in helping an individual grow and develop and earn more income and so forth? That is done through processes and data and insights that shed light on what the needs are. So that's going to lay into this notion that we are moving from HR tech to work tech. And I really celebrate that he is using this language, because I have long been, and if you've read my article around People Analytics 3.0, we moved to behavioral data and data exhaust. And of course, there's ethics around that we can talk about. For this purposes right now, I'm really interested not only in people's skills, AKA capabilities, but I'm really interested in their capacity. What are they able to do given the constraint of time? We're all constrained by time. So if we're applying work technologies to understand what people are doing and not doing, then we can get greater visibility and optimize for business outcomes relative to the needs of the individual. So that's real exciting. So the final slide I'll say about or share about Josh's presentation, which again, was excellent, was the employee engagement market has evolved into well-being. There is culture surveys. Obviously, we're surveying and asking questions and creating dialogue with employees at a more frequent basis than we historically did. Oftentimes, we're going down to the individual level so we can actually understand the other data that aligns with that individual responses. Of course, there needs to be a discipline that's well communicated for those types of processes to happen. At the end of the day, if individuals believe that the data that they're creating and or supplying is going to benefit them as well as the organization, then the data is good, and then good things happen for both the organization and the individual, and likely the other stakeholders. When that trust is broken, that data is not good, it's not frequent enough, and we just lose sight. I had a CEO tell me years ago, Al, I feel like I'm flying blind. And I'm like, that's not good. And we had to look at why is that? And there was a lack of trust, lack of frequency, lack of variability in the data, which spoke to the data quality and the underlying processes. So employee engagement, I think, is a great leverage point to create what I would call appropriate data for this time. In other words, if we go and use the same survey that we did 12 months ago right now, exclusively, you're probably not going to get much benefit because people aren't going to feel seen. It's like these questions aren't relating to my current reality. However, if you're crafting questions, even that you did a few months ago at the outset of COVID, change them. Take the historical data, maybe take the idea of normative data, benchmarking, all that. I don't want to say throw it out. because there is some value in some cases. However, I would be more curious about internal benchmarking. I would prioritize asking the right question, getting the right data, and then you can take the appropriate action to achieve the outcome that you want. So these are the key takeaways that I have seen over the first 3 days of HR Tech. And again, I'm going to own the bias that I have, or the lens that I'm looking at these presentations with, is that looking out for people is simply good business. And it's kind of cliche now, but it is. And the data is there. Data are there. Sorry, I don't want to get picked on that. So employee experience needs to link with workforce planning and what I would also say people strategy. The language that we use is going to be very, very important. They're all integrated. Don't get confused and hung up by, oh, that's that, that's that, that's that. Just pick some language and go with it, define it, and be consistent. And lastly, this idea that we're going to have these HR strategies that are exclusive of digital transformation, exclusive of IT strategies. If they're going to affect people within the workforce, then there needs to be multifunction governance over what is going to be the employee experience. And so I would really hope that you either have that process in place already, or that it is going to happen over the near term. When that does happen, then good things ensue. When siloed strategies are still in place, particularly given the nature of work right now, then I don't know how that's frankly going to work because IT is going to affect the people's experience, or the worker's experience. The worker experience obviously going to affect innovation, other outcomes, the customer experience, and obviously that's all going to affect financial returns. So again, keep that in mind. It might be a bit disruptive and uncomfortable given how business has been done historically, but even pre-COVID, McKinsey, Josh Bersin, Willis Towers Watson, all these groups were saying we need new management models, and here we are in the midst of COVID, and new management models are finally emerging, and they need to stay. So hope you found that helpful. We're going to take a quick break, and we'll be back with Elizabeth Jones of Microback.